watched a video on YouTube of a psychiatrist talking openly about how mental illness and talking about that online is dangerous. And part of it I can understand and I want to talk about, but the other part of it, I'm offended by, and as having grown up at a time when mental health was not talked about, silence is not going to help anybody. Silence is what very often ends up in death, or in just sicker people. So I'm going to do the opposite of what this doctor recommended that I do, which is to not speak about mental health or my mental illness on social media. I'm going to do the opposite of that. I'm going to talk about it. Because apparently mental health awareness equals too much awareness. It equals, I don't know what it equals. It's like I'm not putting it on a pedestal. I'm not glorifying it. I understand and I agree that there is danger in that. Talking about something does not mean that we need to romanticize it. Those don't equate to each other. And he did so much conflating in this video that I really needed to respond to it and to put a different perspective on YouTube. And to say, listen, as an educator, learners who scare me the most are learners who are not talking about their mental health. Which is to say, if they are sick, if they are clearly not doing well, if they are alienating, if their habits are changing, if they are clearly sad, clearly depressed, or at least clearly sad, clearly anxious, and they're not venting, and they're not expressing, they're not getting it off their chest, almost literally, not really, but almost. If they're not crying about it, to sharing and expressing in their pain, they're hiding it. They're ashamed. And this is much more dangerous than talking too much. In this video, we're going to go from feeling weird about talking about mental health and mental illness to knowing that this is a natural part of our existence and that actually 1.1 billion, 1 in 7-ish people struggle with diagnosed mental health conditions. Billion. So, silence is more dangerous. I want to start with that. Early in the video, he said something about people on TikTok flexing their medication, and I don't know what else he said. Something about flexing, like to flex your muscles. And he said this, and there is some truth to this, which is to say that when you're on social media, especially as a young person, and especially as a young person who might be actively in crisis, right? Actively sick. You are not in remission. You are not doing well. Your health is not doing well. You are actively going through the struggle. You are suffering. So when you're actively in crisis and you're a young person and you're putting that stuff on the internet, is particularly to people who you do not love, who may not love you, probably don't love you if you don't love them, then that is an issue. Because even back in my day when we had a little bit of social media but not much, MySpace and what was the other one? Zanga? I think it was Zang. Comment in this video if you know what I'm talking about and tell me what that was called. It wasn't Tumblr, but it felt like Tumblr. there is some truth to don't air your dirty laundry on the internet. And there is some bigger truth to don't go to the wrong people when you need help. Which is to say, there is such a thing as oversharing to people who don't have your best interest in mind, in heart. They may actively be trying to hurt you or diminish you in some way. Teenagers, they're in a very socially intensive period of their lives because they're individuating and they're leaving the family nest to go out and figure out who they are in the structure of their peers. And this can be a very intense process. There's a reason that they're always experiencing so much drama, because their brains, on top of having higher dopaminergic cycles, like more extreme dopaminergic cycles, where their dopamine is like, I want this, I want that, and it just feels so big. And when they don't get it, it's like, oh, that crash is bad. So when you have these more intense ups and downs and more intense sensitivity, and you as a person and you and your brain are both trying to figure out the social dynamic, you're going to care a lot about people and what people think about you. And so putting on social media, I feel horrible. I'm thinking about medication, and just posting that onto Facebook as a 17-year-old on your feed, just publicly like that, not advisable. Not advisable. And the reason for that is because when you share what you're going through, when your mental health is struggling, you want to go to a trusted person, someone that really cares and knows you, really cares about you and knows you. You want to go to your parents if they're open to that kind of conversation. You want to go to your very good friends. If you have neither open-minded parents, nor do you have close friends, then you want to turn to an organization, a program, a group of some kind that is dedicated specifically to your problem. So you're going to research, Google, you're going to search for youth mental health groups, youth mental health advocacy groups, youth mental health support groups. You want a targeted and trusted person to listen to your I'm not feeling well. You do not want to put your stuff out just randomly into the ether because it makes you feel a little bit better just to get it off your chest for that second. Social media has really intense implications. Someone could find you randomly in the world, and they could target you as not feeling well, as being young, and they could it is dangerous. That's why it's dangerous. And this is what the doctor was failing to say that was so important. It's like it's not dangerous just to talk about your mental health. In fact, it's dangerous to not talk about your mental health, especially when you're mentally ill. You need to talk about it. So there are, being open about that stuff helps in some ways and at some times. But you need to do it. You should do it well, and in the right places and at the right times, but talk about it. Even to yourself, on a video or something. Process it out loud, process it in writing, process it in art. You need to express the pain. Otherwise, it will fester. It will just sit there like boiling water until you... So, Um, I, as I said, I think there's nuance to the conversation of like vulnerable people seeking support on social media. When they're actively in crisis, I don't recommend it as a public announcement. So that part is fair. However, this small kernel of truth wrapped up in a much bigger message that says something, I think, completely different, that's what's dangerous, is a doctor, a board certified psychiatrist saying we're talking too much about mental health. My guy, how do you think you get paid? Like, it just makes me so mad that sometimes I have this, like, okay. That thing about TikTok and like people flexing their prescriptions and diagnoses that they've accumulated. I have 7 diagnoses. If you want to say accumulated with that attitude, fine. But I can guarantee you, I didn't ask for these, I didn't choose these, I didn't want them. They are in my life now, and I have done everything I could with them in tow. They are a part of my identity. It doesn't mean I'm a victim to my diagnoses. No. It just means that they're a huge part of me. And when you say the word flexing, I understand I'm venting about someone that I'm not even gonna call out. But people do need to talk about it. And so I'm just putting out another perspective onto the internet because people do need to talk about it. And there is value in talking about it publicly. The only distinguishing, like, the only thing I would pull apart here is that if you're speaking about your mental health journey, your mental illness journey, right? Like if you're speaking about having gone through hallucinations or suicidality or paranoia, like what's that when you disassociate? When you're talking about these things, talking about them publicly is useful, but I would not recommend speaking about them when it's actively happening. I think there is a special place for that, which is I think people do need representation for the moments that suck. I think people do need to see on a screen, like in that format of a movie, TV, YouTube video, people do need to see, like, people talking to themselves and, stimming and like these more day-to-day symptoms. But when it comes to kind of the violent and very painful experience, and just hold on, pause, because when I say violent, I don't mean toward others. I want to be very clear about that. Most mentally ill people get a very bad reputation for being violent. Their experience is violent, and sometimes they self-harm. Every now and again, you get someone who's intent on harming another person or who actually harms another person. It does happen. It is very rare. Statistically, it's like less than 10% for sure. I don't know the percentage. I don't know studies on that, but it's so rare. I've been to the inpatient unit 3 times. I think one of those times I met a 15-year-old girl who was very homicidal and had been for a very long time. She had never hurt anyone. So this is anecdotally, but in my 3 experiences of being in these places, never, not ever, had someone been there because they had hurt someone. When you hurt someone and you're caught, you go to jail, you go to prison, which I have opinions about that as well. Okay. If people are talking about cancer, if people are talking about death and grief, if people are talking about chronic illness, why in the mother would you not talk about your mental health? What? it still falls under this category of like, maybe keep that to yourself. Maybe that's too much information. And you know, I generally don't see this. Like when I speak to people about my story, and I'm very open about my story, people are generally really open to it. In fact, they resonate. People generally share like their stories in return. You know, my kid this, my grandkid that, oh, my nephew, oh, me. Did you know I was? Did you know I had? I can't believe that in 2026 we're still having to remind people that it's okay to talk about your mental health. I can't believe that this is in response to a doctor. There should be some kind of like Hippocratic oath that's like, I'm not an asshole. Okay. See, and this is, okay, I need to calm down. The point of his video, okay, I'm not going to call out the title of his video, but the title was something along the lines of like, labels, you know, don't need to be who you are, essentially. No, he's right, they don't. And yet, I would argue that if your label affects not only every day, but every nanosecond, every movement you make, every time someone looks at you, every time someone thinks about you, every aspect of your existence is colored and changed by this label, if it's that life-changing and life-shaping, then why wouldn't you identify with it? If it's not something you can change about yourself, then why wouldn't you identify? Like, that's what that means. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. He also said something ridiculous about mental health not being stigmatized. In fact, I think he even said mental illness is not stigmatized. He must not watch TV. He must not read the news. He must not know any other doctors. Yeah. Because it 100,000% is still discriminated against. It is still stigmatized. What's interesting to me is that this man says that there's no stigma, and in the same video, he uses the word lunatic to say that the reason that we're all talking about mental health is because the media is filled with lunatics. Lunatics. I'm pretty sure that there's a connection between lunatic and woman, by the way. Something about the moon. But the word lunatic is not a nice word. Like, if somebody calls you a lunatic, they're either saying you've exaggerated something good, and they're using it kind of, you know, almost in jest, or they're literally saying you're insane, you're crazy, you're not in your right mind. Just, how can you say there's no stigma when you're literally using a bad word for mentally ill people in the video where you're saying that there's no stigma? This man is not. Okay. I have to just keep going because there's more stuff that he does and talks about that I don't like, that I need to talk about. Because when there's like something gross in the air, you have to, this is the Febreze to put his smelly information off, like get it out of the YouTube world. At one point he said that talking about mental health too much is having this effect. It's leading teachers to recommend medication to families for their kids. Let me be very clear. I'm an educator. Okay, I'm not a teacher. I'm an educator, which means that I did not take the exam to be certified, licensed as a teacher. I'm not. I have an accredited degree. That's what I have. That's what I want to have. Teachers who are heroes don't have they're not clinicians. They are not providers of health care. They have no business telling you that your kid should or should not be on medication. Zero. That is not their jurisdiction. That is not our jurisdiction. So, if you have a teacher telling you that, first of all, report them. Second of all, ignore them, because they don't know about that stuff. You need to go to a doctor. You need to go to a nurse practitioner. You need someone who is qualified to tell you, should my kid or shouldn't my kid be on medication. So that is just an unprofessional teacher. That's all that is. It is not an effect. Like, he's conflating all sorts of stuff here. He's conflating mental health awareness with unprofessional teachers. They're not related. Okay, another thing he puts together is big pharmaceuticals with like grassroots mental health efforts. And I'm sure that happens, because I'm just sure it does, but like, is every person advocating for mental health awareness getting paid by big pharma? I'm not. I never will be. So, okay, there's another hole in your stupid argument. Finally, he also says this part about parents. He says moms want disorders for their kid so they can rebrand medication without guilt. Super offended by that. As someone on medication that started taking medication as a child, I don't want to be on medication. You know who recommends that I keep my medication up? My doctor, my psychiatrist. I don't want this. I need it. There is such a difference. I yearn for when I will be able to sustain my lifestyle so religiously that maybe, just maybe, I will be able to survive, maybe even thrive, without these dependencies I have on serious chemicals that have serious side effects. I have seen the serious side effects. My mom has these serious side effects. My friend's mom have these. Like, I get it, okay? Medication is not all good. This is just my personal opinion. Some people cherish their medication, and that's fine. To each their own, okay? But to have a psychiatrist saying that moms will feel guilt-free about giving their child medication as long as they have a diagnosis, and that they hang on to that diagnosis like whatever. So they hang on to it, they hold on to it. That is so insulting. Parents are doing whatever they can, whatever. They don't know. Nobody knows what to do, okay? And so they're grasping at straws, and they're listening to professionals like you, and they're trying. And if medication genuinely helps a person, a child, to function and maybe even live another day, why would they not take that medication? So just so many like unfair reductions and conclusions and assumptions and information tied together that was never meant to be tied together. Is a massive difference between your diagnosis is your whole identity and don't talk about it publicly ever. Those are not the same messages. It made me angry, and now it's making me sad. to think that this man, this doctor, I just really didn't like him. And there are so many doctors who don't have a lived experience. I have met one doctor with a lived experience of mental health that he told me about. And I know of another doctor who I want to shout out, Dr. Chris Palmer. I don't know him personally. He's never been my doctor, but I read his book called Brain Energy. Now, Chris Palmer does have some diagnoses of his own. He has quite a story. He went to Harvard. I think he might even teach at Harvard. I'm not sure, but Dr. Chris Palmer, Christopher Palmer, Palmer. His book is called Brain Energy, and he does argue, like sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, medication is not the best route. Like sometimes medication is given to people who don't do well with it, and they need something else. They need like something else. And he talks about, you know, the power of different diets and consuming more strategically this and not that, and the sleep and like your lifestyle being more of the medicine. There are good doctors out there, just like there are good teachers out there, just like there are good nurses and everybody else. Mental illness, being mentally ill, is not a cool thing. But I think really the way that I want to end this video, I mean, it's just a part of reality. The way that I want to end this video is just by saying, if you ever hear anything on the internet or in the world, including this video, put your judgment hat on. And I don't mean judge for the sake of like gossip. I mean judge, be critical, think for yourself. Does it resonate? Does it make sense to me? Because only you can determine that. Perhaps someone else was watching that doctor and saying, this makes a lot of sense. I can't even imagine that, but maybe. And maybe that's what they needed to hear because of their background and their perspective and their affinity with that guy and his. So thank you if you listened for this long. I have been venting. I needed to vent. I needed to balance. Probably no one's going to watch this. I'm trying.